Okay, so who owns the world? Who controls everything? So let's go and we will start very quickly here. Pick everyone's favorite company, Apple. Who owns Apple? Go on. You know? Well, we'll find out. We go here on Yahoo Finance. We go to holders and we see shares held by institutions, that's the most, is 59%. And who are the top two? Vanguard and BlackRock. Vanguard with 7.7% and BlackRock with 6.6%. Pick any company. You want food? Let's go with food. Unilever, they make all the food, all the detergent, all the soaps, pretty much everywhere in the world. Unilever, held by institutions. Surprisingly, just 9.6%. But who are those? BlackRock over there. Let's go with Disney, number one media company. They own Pixar, Marvel, NBC, ESPN, whatever you want. Disney owns it. Held by institutions, 66%. Top two, Vanguard and BlackRock. What about their competitor, Comcast? They own Sky, 20th Century Fox, everything else. Held by institutions, 85%. Top two, you guessed it, Vanguard, 8.5%, and BlackRock. Maybe the banks is different. JP Morgan. So JP Morgan, held by institutions, 72%, Vanguard, and BlackRock. Heck, let's even go with who makes this computer. It's a Hewlett-Packard computer. Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, held by institutions, 85%. No, it cannot be Vanguard and BlackRock. What about the world's number one monopoly? Google, which is called the Alphabet Group, right? Google, number one monopoly in the world, would never be investigated by the Fed or anyone in America for antitrust laws. 67% held by institutions. BlackRock and Vanguard. This is a company that makes 80% of the Android software. 80% of all mobile software is Android, and they're owned by Google. I'm currently using Google Chrome, also made by them. That's the number one browser in the world, the number one search engine in the world, all owned by basically these two companies. Now, you've got to remember one thing. When you own more than 20% of a company, it becomes an associated company of yours. You have to include them in your financial statements. It's very public. You have a person on their board, and it becomes very public. But if you split it, you can remain below the radar. So who owns BlackRock? You know who owns BlackRock? Here we are, BlackRock Inc. Owned by Vanguard and BlackRock itself, which basically means owned by Vanguard again. This is what's happening, guys. We have, very scarily, we have slept walk into BlackRock owning and Vanguard owning everything. And we see that BlackRock is really essentially owned by Vanguard. In fact, it says here, this is just shocking. In March 2020, the Federal Reserve chose BlackRock to manage two corporate bond buying programs, the $500 billion primary corporate credit facility. So the Fed, the government, gave power to BlackRock to buy corporate bonds. Which ones do you think it bought first? Ones that are going bankrupt or ones that they own? The number one, the first one they bought was Apple, to support Apple, right? Apple was the first one that BlackRock, who owns Apple, second biggest shareholder, went and used government money to buy. Gets worse, guys. Don't worry, it gets worse. If we look at ownership and transparency, it says very clearly there, for example, the percentage of shares held in BlackRock in Apple, 6.3%, and Microsoft, the two competitors, Wells Fargo, a bank, and JP Morgan, a bank. This concentration of ownership has serious anti-competitive problems. Not just that, there is a chain of circular ownership, right? That is what it's essentially saying is Vanguard owns BlackRock, and Vanguard is privately held company, right? We don't know who owns Vanguard. But what we do know is essentially what Vanguard's done is owns BlackRock and State Street and the other funds, and it allows them to control the companies. It's basically like me, my brother, and my dad each owning 7%. So we stay under the radar because we only own 7%, but really we own 21%, and so therefore we really control all those companies. Now they do this because they are called passive funds, right? Passive funds, which means they just buy all the shares, but they don't really care, and they don't know, and you can't really get in. It's not, they have no say in what goes on in the company. But remember, like all sleeper cells, like all terrorist cells, they stay passive. They're not doing anything. But what could they do? They literally right now could make sure every single company in that we know of, right, hike prices immediately, and there is no competition in the world, right? So they would completely destroy everything. They own everything. They can make companies go bankrupt. They can tell a company, Google for instance, we want you to take on $1,000 trillion of loans. Oh, at 20%, and therefore they go bankrupt. They can do whatever they want. Who owns this Vanguard? I don't know. I got all this information. Thank you, Yuvi, for sending me the video it's on Rumble. It's called Monopolies: Who Controls the World. It's 1 hour long, and it basically starts off with this, and then it moves over into conspiracy theory craziness. So I just cut out the conspiracy theory rubbish and just gave you the facts that Vanguard essentially owns every company that we know of. Who owns them? I don't know. But whoever does own them controls the world. And that is really scary. That's what we should be worried about. That's the main thing.